Yeah, so we get this general notion of double spirals showing up, not because we try to do something, it's just the natural connectivity because the body wants to remain balanced within its movement. The difficulty with this is being relaxed enough that even though the foot is moving, your weight stays at the center of the foot. And that's the typical for, if we take a simple movement as the first one, um, a lot of people will say, oh, well, while your arms are going up, your weight is going on your heel. And then when your arms are coming down, you're going more towards the front. And you have this kind of swaying action that comes, which is understandable. And the main reason usually is to counterbalance the weight of the arm. Because if you're standing here and you bring your arms up, just the weight of your arm is enough to bring you forward. But that will happen based on how much micro tension you're still holding into your body. If I have a bit of tension, especially if there's some up and down also through the knees and hips, if I'm holding just a little bit of tension here as my arms go forward, maintaining my weight centered becomes a bit more difficult. I feel that pull, so in order to compensate it, I have to just rock my body a bit backward. But if I'm able to adjust my center weights through the lower dantian and the inside of the body, I can have enough of an opening through the sacroiliac joint and allow my sacrum to adjust itself so that my center weight remains aligned through the center of my body, the center of my feet, so that the weight of my arm is not pulling me forward. That I have enough of micro adjustment inside that I don't need to have such a big movement, bringing my ears over my heel, that I can keep the center of my head aligned with the center of my foot, and that everything is opening up enough through the back and released enough through the front that the weight of my arm is compensated for in other place and spread rather than having to have a much bigger movement. So we have kind of the same thing going on within the feet. If I have, particularly if there's a bit more tension throughout the ankles, as my feet arch, or if I'm overarching my feet, I'll have the feeling that the weight really go on the outside, on the outer edge of my foot. And usually that will come with some tension on the inside of the ankle as well. And whereas if I can have this, rather than bringing the weight out, if I can feel more of a engagement of the adductor of the big toe, which is the muscle that tie the heel to the first metatarsal of the big toe itself, passing the big joint, then I have this tightening here, which create more of a rounder shape because the front and the back are getting closer together, rather than having a feeling that I have to bring my weight on the outside. And by rounding everything, it puts some of the weight also on the outside because it creates this roundedness rather than having a flat foot. So basically what I'm doing is getting my arch to do this rather than doing this. Make sense? So it's really subtle and it requires a bit of time to play and get used to that. I would say having barefoot shoes type of thing so that your foot is not squished in is important. Or walking barefoot if the floor is not cold, of course, or kind of getting that fluidity and that ability of our foot to be able to move in multiple directions is essential. If the foot is always squished and tight, and let's say particularly for women, if you wear high heels or fancy shoes that are always super tight, it's really, really bad on that. Open it. Keep space in there. I would add even more in the notion of how the spiral works through the leg. And that's one way we can look at it is to the primary respiratory movement from osteopathy. basically the center line that separates the bone movement is the one between the first and second toe, between the big toe and the other. So the Jueyin, the liver channel. So the big toe goes towards the outside of the foot, and anatomically that's also the center line between inside and outside. So the center line separating the inside of the foot is between the big toe and the other. That's why the muscle that pull the big toe out, or if we look just globally, we could think it's in, but because of how they separated it, say out. That's why it's a adductor and not abductor. So we have this toe that opens up in this way, the big toe that kind of wraps around and has that pulling effect, which on the ankle, because it creates a bit of that kind of towards the pinky opening rotation, the tibia itself will wrap inward. It's also the tibia is more inward than it is out. We can feel, the whole flat part being just a bit more here, and the stomach channel being really kind of the middle line that separates with the outside of the leg. So as the bone rotates in, we have then through the knee and the thigh bone that actually rotates out. And because of the shape of the head of the femur, this outward rotation, so the femur being like this outward rotation will create just a gentle push on the pelvis so that we have that pressure going towards the pubic bone, so that two pubic bones start to gently press together, which will open the space of the sacroiliac joint. So if this is my pelvis, what's going on with the inhale of the primary respiratory movement and the actual physical inhale when we connect them together is that my ilium will gently rise, spread out, while the tibia gets a little, the pubic bone gets a little closer together. That gentle movement is also what allow my femur to rotate externally, which will create a gentle sitting feeling also, or opening here, which gives us that opening of the quad so that the connection for all the fluids between the legs and the body improve, and also gives us that feeling of being seated on our legs. And from there, the opening of the sacroiliac free the sacrum and the tailbone to be able to move and tuck under without rolling the hips, which then allow the spine to ripple on its own, and so on and so forth for the upper body. But this is from the lower body how it connects with everything. Usually in osteopathy, we talk about the inhale and the exhale, the way it's presented. So the inhale is the part I just talked about, which opens everything. And then when there's a release, the natural return follows back. So the bigger amplitude of movement, the more free the structures are. And that's by following those amplitude that you can observe, is there tension somewhere? Do you need to bring a certain amplitude back in one way or the other? We link our physical inhale to that general inhale of the primary respiratory movement, so that everything just kind of moves together in the same direction. So we simply improve that rising, which is the younger phase of it, because we want everything to go back. And then after that, with the release, we just let it naturally, just like an exhale, happen more on its own. So I would say, because we're standing vertically for the exhale, when I exhale, naturally everything, all this movement reverse, which will bring us to have the arch or the feet to kind of spread a little bit more, the tibia kind of flat, return to its position and kind of go into the opposite direction. The thighs also kind of go back in, which then engage a little bit more the yang channel going down. We have that gentle setting in. This is really the part of the engine that guides the movement. So if we go from this, if we take it into our first movement, as I have the placement of my feet, the connection, the rotation through the legs, the placement of the pelvis, the rippling through the spine, which then engage the placement of the shoulder blade. This placement of the shoulder blade will start to pull my arm up, which will have a bit of a rotational aspect in the humerus, but I want to make sure that my elbow doesn't drop. So I have that counterbalance through the Yang Ming and the presence also of the Tai Yang, so that my arm remain in place even though there's that double spiraling. So I feel that the humerus want to go in one part, but the forearm holds it in place so that I have this big connection through the taiyang that go from the pinky, from the small ocean under the elbow, so that the chi is here supporting it, into the shoulder blade, which will then go lower and lower, which will then place the neck and have this strong connection and placement of the neck until, as I'm here and I exhale, the drop through the front, allowing my arms to gently return. So even though the movement looks a lot more linear on the surface, I want to have these double spiraling sensations showing at the center around the bones. Yeah, so we get this general notion of double spirals showing up, not because we try to do something, it's just the natural connectivity because the body wants to remain balanced within its movement. So all that from the feet. Um, Actually, this movement really it doesn't start anywhere, it just starts everywhere at once. That's the tricky part. At first, it's relatively easy to feel it through the breath because that internal pressure of the diaphragm start to place the pelvis, which then connects down the legs and also connects up the spine. But because gravity pressurizes us onto the ground at the same time that that internal pressure start, we need to have this reaction against the ground so we're not collapsing. Because if we're too collapsed, there's no room to breathe either. Find both ways, feel both ways, how you can start from the earth and just feel this rippling up all the way. And sometime at first we need to feel it layer by layer until it's harmonized enough that you can feel everything expanding all at once. So to feel that connectivity from the fascia starting in the feet, how the placement of the arch of the foot starts to affect the tibia, how it affects the femur, how it affects the pelvis, that affects the spine, that goes up and affects the shoulder blade, that then will affect the arm, affecting the neck, and then affecting the cranium. Everything just open and then gently coming back. Or feel that as soon as the diaphragm starts to move, we get this expansion all over the place and coming back. So we can play with those different layers of perception and noticing the instantaneity of it once it's already fluid enough that you can bring your awareness to any part and starts the movement from it where with everything that will follow afterwards. Thanks for watching. Leave your question or comments in the comment section below. And don't forget to like and subscribe. If you want to learn more about Tai Chi Qigong Shabasha, visit my website, qigong18.com, for more information on online classes and private classes, just like the one you just watched. Have a good day.